Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all across the country. And as you get better at restorative or interdisciplinary communication, a lot of the questions come up, what should I do? And you're not going to believe it. I got a great team today, Team Winnipeg, and we're going to be talking about the interdisciplinary communication modalities in a contemporary practice. You do not want to miss this. Do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in a second. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. We are having so much fun doing this, and today it's only going to get more fun. I got some good friends of mine on today, and you're going to see how awesome they are. Took us a while to get them together, but you'll love this. So, hey, couple show notes before we jump into this. We are shooting this live on Facebook, so as you have questions, don't be afraid. Add them to the feed, and I'll ask our panel of experts today the questions directly, and I'll get the answers straight from them. Or if you're watching the broadcast later on, feel free to add questions to the feed, and we'll make sure we get you the right answers, because I want to make sure you get the most out of this in this great profession that we all love. Now, I'm just going to share with you who these guys are. This is the first time this has ever been done, so we're going to roll with this. I have got some amazing experts who are friends of mine from Team Winnipeg. I'll tell you my story and how I met them. I have been going to the Seattle Study Club Symposium for years, and it's been about 10 years now that we've had a chance to get to know each other. I've watched you guys grow and develop and become an unbelievable team. And one of the things I said to you, Paresh, last time we were on was, buddy, give us some insight in how you make this work, because I meet so many great young dentists that are on this path, and they hit these forks in the road. Should I do this? How do I do this? And in which direction do I go? And so I'm so grateful to have you guys on. So Paresh, you want to do me a favor? People haven't heard of you guys. Can you just introduce your team and how this team all came together?
Sure, Kirk. Thanks very much for having us. My name is Paresh Shaw. I'm a restorative dentist in Winnipeg, Canada. So I've been practicing for 26 years. And been part of the Seattle Study Club network for quite a few years as well, probably 8 or 9 years. I've got two close friends with me who are colleagues that I work with. They're just part of an interdisciplinary team that we have here in Winnipeg. And one is one of my best friends. I've known him from dental school, is Tim Dumore. He's an orthodontist. And the other is a newer person to our group over the last few years. Her name is Hoda Hosseini, and she's a periodontist, but also from Winnipeg as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you just give us a little bit of background? Because you guys didn't just, even though you guys have been friends for a very long time, you didn't just fall into this. You guys have worked hard at creating what's called a true interdisciplinary team. And just give us some background on that.
You know what? Okay. Long story short, I mean, I went through a stage where I was kind of struggling in my practice, and I think a lot of general practitioners might go through that a little bit, where you're getting a little stale. You want to do more. You want to learn how to do more, and you finally get no pun intended, Tim. And then we want to try and elevate the quality of care that you're offering and do more comprehensive care. And to be honest with you, like, some of that journey I started on my own. But what really clicked was probably about 11 or 12 years ago. Tim came to me, got me a book by one of our mentors, who is now a friend, Rick Robley. He's an orthodontist from Arkansas. And to this day, I mean, he's one of the people that still serve as a mentor for me. And he handed me this book and said, Paresh, read this book, because we're going to start practicing this way. And then he invited two of our close friends to go to an interdisciplinary conference that the late Vince Kokich had put on. And we were sitting there in the audience, kind of awestruck. And, I look at Tim, and my buddy Ken all of a sudden looks over and goes, we're going back. This is how we're practicing, guys, from now on. And that was kind of the defining moment for me, is when he handed me that book. And since then, I've been able to pay that back to Rick numerous times. And it's made a world of difference, Tim.
Yeah, I think also that was the one of the things that helped our study club kind of get going, because we'd had a study club before that was it was helpful. It was a good club, and we enjoyed getting together and talking about teeth, but it didn't necessarily have a lot of structure, I would say. And then around that time, I think Paresh had been invited to the Seattle Study Club Symposium it was in Cancun, and he came back from that meeting. This was all kind of happening around the same time, and he came back from that meeting, and he was so fired up. It was crazy, and it was like, simmer down, Paresh. But he was like, no, we have to do this Seattle Study Club thing. So that we said, okay. And since then, our club has taken off, and I think the whole ethic behind the Seattle Study Club is about promoting interdisciplinary care, and I think it's those things together it's been like the framework, I would say, for our club.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where why some of that was defining or eye-opening for me, that Tim probably experienced some of this during his grad program, and I haven't done a grad program in dentistry. It was before dentistry in another life where I did that. It was a little different, but is just how Robley defines the difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, and there is a real difference between them when you look at his concepts and what he tries to teach. We all know the term multidisciplinary, whether it's in medicine. I mean, it can be in engineering, in law even, where you're bringing in a lawyer that's looking after, real estate as well as, finances and so forth. And so in medicine and dentistry, we know that there's specialties. And what Robley talks about when he refers to multidisciplinary is that we all know the value of the restorative team and the specialists. We know what the dentist can do. We know what an orthodontist, what a periodontist, endodontist, oral surgeon can do. But there isn't structured collaboration, and there isn't a defined common goal between all of them. For instance, I know that person has crooked teeth. I know that there's some spaces. I send them off to Tim, and Tim will go, okay, well, we'll just straighten the teeth. But we don't talk to Hoda, who is going to do implants, to find out if Tim's going to put the roots in the proper spot. He's just straightening teeth. I don't even tell him anything. I just say, hey, straighten the teeth, and then send it to Hoda to put the implants in. And none of us are talking to each other. Patient wants something, and all of a sudden everything's done. And we've seen these kind of cases. I've been involved in some of them my own personally when I didn't know better. And you get it back, and now all of a sudden you gotta cut teeth a little more than you wanted to. You tell the patient, maybe we got to go through ortho again. Maybe we can't put an implant. So now she says, I can't put an implant here. The roots are crooked. Let's do a bridge. Right. So that's multidisciplinary. And what Robley defines as interdisciplinary is where you are actually communicating. We have a defined goal and a treatment plan. The patient basically says, this is where I want to go. We come up with a restorative plan. Now we go to these specialists, and they get their treatment plan involved. And now we look at it all together, and we're like, okay, how do we do this interdisciplinary? Hey, Tim, can you put the teeth here? Yeah, I can do that. But I don't know if you're going to have enough bone here. She's going to have to graft. Maybe we need an osteotomy. Let's get the surgeon involved. That's interdisciplinary. And I love working with these guys because we actually communicate. There's a mutual respect with one another. Anyway.
Yeah. And Hoda, you're the newest one to this incredible group. Can you give us some perspective as you've come into this, these great clinicians and working together?
Oh, Kirk, I guess I was very blessed to kind of fall into this right after graduation. Paresh and I started working together, and in fact, he invited me to work with him in his own office. So I was providing in-house perio to his patients, and I think that was the first time and that I actually got the glimpse of what an interdisciplinary treatment plan can be. Because I'm sitting there, the patient is there. Patient is telling us what she or he wants, and that's the critical point, in my opinion, is really understanding the objective, the primary objective, which is patient chief complaint. And then together with the restorative doctor and myself, addressing that. And so therefore having the communication under one roof and involving the patient in that communication as well. So having had that experience with Paresh, then in my career, as I went forward, even though if it wasn't under the same roof with my referring doctors and all the other patient care providers, I understood the absolute critical importance of communication. When a patient is in my chair and there's that one referral slip that says what it's needed, I'm always picking up the phone and I'm calling up my referring doctor. What is the objective? What are we trying to achieve here? Who are the other team members involved? And what does the patient want? What is the bottom line here? And I think that really goes a long way in helping with the communication, really. And I think at the end of the line, unless we have good communication between all these team members who are expertly skilled, we are not going to get the best treatment for our patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk to you brought up a good point before we got started about the modalities, but you guys, I want you to be honest. Like, is this super easy? You just look around, you find a specialist and you just start working together. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork you have to do for shared values, to be on the same page. Like, how hard or how easy is this?
I think the biggest part of that whole question is just to have a desire to want to do it. Because not everyone does. It can be more work. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it saves you work. But in my office, I have 6 clinical chairs, and I spend most of my day there doing ortho stuff. But once in a while, I have to go up to the front to see a new patient. So they say, "Okay, do more. Go see a new patient." And as I'm meeting with the treatment coordinator before I go in the room, I look at the clipboard. It's the one piece of paper we just can't seem to get rid of. I'm looking at the clipboard and I'm kind of looking at the picture and I'm listening to what the treatment coordinator has said to me about what she's learned in their conversation. And when I look at the pictures of the teeth, if it's one of those patients that's going to require some more work, it's a 62-year-old woman who's missing teeth and needs perio and oral surgery and Lord knows what all, restorative work. If it's one of those patients, the next thing I do is I look back at the clipboard and see who the dentist was. Because if I see Precious' name on that form, I know that he and I are on the same page and that we have a desire to do this. And there's lots of great dentists who, if I see their name, I don't cringe, but I know that it's going to be a lot more work for me because I'm going to have to be the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And we talk about having a quarterback for this kind of thing, but that's almost not even the right term. Like, I guess ultimately you need to have someone, in control or monitoring things, but really it is a team effort to be able to sit down. So I think the biggest thing a young dentist or any dentist needs to have is a desire to work towards getting better at that and to learn the skills to be able to do it, and to learn other skills too. Even like you might not necessarily do ortho, but learning about ortho can make you a better interdisciplinary team member because you have a better understanding of what's going on. And I think it's not just about taking CE, it's about working, if all of us sit down and talk about a patient, you learn stuff over time. I learned stuff about perio from Hoda that it's like, oh, there's a new technique for whatever. And if you're working together, you learn those things. And if you're not working together, you don't.
Right.
And to Tim's point, like even at the Seattle Study Club symposiums that are every year. I mean, there's a good chunk of restorative lectures as well, but these guys are actually sitting next to me listening to the restorative dentists talk about restorative procedures, just like I'll sit there and listen to perio and ortho. So you're going to be a sponge, and you're right. The desire to want to do that is important. That's number one. The rest kind of can fall into place if you pick the right people.
Yeah. And we were talking about this beforehand. I travel all over the place and I don't see a ton of people going to the super dentist concept. You hear it, but I think the younger dentists, they go, look, I've tried this. I hate endo, or I'm just not going to try this. And they start to become, I think self-awareness plays a big role in this, just figuring out what you do really well and just spending your time there. It also adds itself to the joy component. And what you find long-term is it's really in the best interest of the patient too. But let's talk about some of the challenges. Now, one of the challenges people tell me is, well, I don't have any time, or how do we communicate? And Hoda, you were talking about the modalities. I'd love for you guys to communicate about how you do this, the modalities, and some of the principles that make this work.
Well, I guess, right now we live in the world that technology makes things easier, right? Just like what we are doing right now. We are all in front of our computers in different corners of the city, but we are able to come together and think together on a same topic matter and share our opinions and point of view. So I guess that is very helpful in order to utilize those measures, and in order to do that. But as Paresh was saying, is a desire to wanting to do that. And I guess the part of the desire is also the knowledge base too. I mean, I remember when I graduated out of dental school, honestly, there was a certain level of arrogance. I thought that I knew it all, right? It took a long time for me to understand. I mean, I hate to say a long time, but a couple of years for me is a long time. For me to understand that, no, I don't know it all. And there are lots of things that I still need to learn. Now, when I graduated out of perio, it took much less time for me to admit that to myself, that even though I've gone through certain more number of years of training, a specific training in one regard in dentistry, there's tons more that I still don't know. So I guess having the guts and the confidence to say that to yourself, and being open to learn from your colleagues, whether you're learning from them from their lectures or from just talking to them over the phone, and just being okay to say that there's things that I still need to learn, and I need to seek out proper consultation from my advisors, whether they are your restorative doctors, whether they are your specialists, and be okay with that and be able to approach them that way. So I guess in terms of modality, yeah, technology can play a huge role in making it easier, but really having the vision, and as Paresh was saying, the desire to say that I need this, I got to go through this, and I got to find the answer. Yeah.
Right. Right. And then can you give us some perspective on how you do this? You know, you guys, we were talking about some of the apps that you use, because you don't always have to be in the same place at the same time, but you do try to when it comes to discussing patients. Is that correct?
You know, yeah, I mean, physically, look, for us, it's not quite as inconvenient as some other cities, but the reality is, you know, our lives, everyone's lives are busy. I mean, and trying to physically be in the same area is hard. We definitely can share, and we have shared patient records securely so that we can actually discuss treatment and actually even discuss diagnoses and treatment plans. So that's been nice. And you can do that. You can do that digitally. It's not overly complicated. And we have more modalities, as you say, as they're coming up. We do have ways to encrypt our data so that it's HIPAA compliant, and be able to share that information, as simple as a photograph to as complex as a 3D scan and a CT scan as well. And I mean, Tim and I do that all the time. With some of the ortho and restorative cases that we do together. So, and we've done that with HODA as well, where we've just shared that here's a CT scan, here's a 3D digital image, and here's some photographs. And if you bring in stuff that Christian's doing, Coachman, I mean, now you can start putting in photos, videos, all of that. Mm-hmm. So it's not complicated to do it, but I think Tim, I can't remember if Tim mentioned that at the beginning or just before we started, is part of it that is the desire for the individuals to want to do it. I do feel that for the millennials, it's easier, but they just need some guidance to know that, hey, this is what's going on and this is how we can communicate. And with some of the more seasoned individuals like myself and so forth, you might not be quite as tech savvy. So it takes a little getting, putting a little bit of effort to get it in there, but it's great. It's a fantastic way to communicate. And hey, right now, once we get off, the three of us could sit and discuss a case.
Right.
So
yeah. I think it's gonna be
or drinks too.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one thing you miss.
Yeah. I do.
Yeah. And Tim, what were you saying? I would love to know
I think it's worth becoming more comfortable with this, because the most satisfying cases we have are the ones where we work together and develop plans where you achieve together as a group, you achieve more than you would working alone. You know, it sounds kind of cliche, but it's really the truth. Some of those patients that come in and they have 10,000 problems long, and if you're a young dentist in, somewhere in Manitoba or wherever, and a patient comes in, you think, good Lord, like, where do I start? Well, I guess that's the point, is you don't have to do it yourself. And there's some real satisfaction from finding a group of people that you like to work with and figuring out a way to make those cases happen. I think sometimes, I mean, I've helped up with a few peer review cases where dentists have done some ortho and things have gone south, and they've been brought before the dental association from a complaint. And the dentist that's reviewing the case doesn't know much about ortho, so they say, look, can you help me out with this? And you look at these cases, and the one thing that stands out is that they saw the patient 85 times or some ridiculous number of times, and you think, you're not making any money doing that. You're just creating aggravation for yourself, and you're not doing a good service for the patient. So, start small and find some people that you can work with, and you'll build it from there. But it takes time to get to that point.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm just curious from all of your perspectives, I get these pitfalls or these hesitations sometimes from young dentists, like, well, if the patient doesn't have any money, if I send them 3 different places, they don't want to do all this. But I found this to be true. Do you guys find this to be? There's no less expensive way to do anything than to do it the right way the first time. Would you agree or disagree?
I think that's totally true. And I think one thing I mean, as an orthodontist out of school or when it's first starting, I could focus on the big picture, and I could even sort of imagine the restorative plan. I did restorative dentistry for 4 years before I went back to ortho school. But one thing I learned from Paresh is that restorative dentists will offer staged treatment for patients. So they might come and have some perio work and some ortho and surgery or whatever. And then in terms of restoring the rest of the case, we need to plan it sometimes, but he'll do, a couple of crowns 1 year, and then the next year a little bit of something else. Because I mean, there's people that come in and say, "Here's my checkbook. What can I do?" But that's the minority of people. Most people would want to know, how can they stage that treatment over time? And I think sometimes if that comes up early in the conversation, where it's going to cost, there's going to be an investment, but it doesn't have to be all in one day, then people are relieved by that and they appreciate being given some options.
Right. Yeah, you brought up a great point, Tim, because it's one of those things where I truly believe that in order to differentiate yourself moving forward, dentists need to be good diagnosticians and understand comprehensive interdisciplinary care. And Tim actually said something that is absolutely true. It's one of those things where, we can be great tooth fixers for everything. If tooth breaks, we can fix it. And if it breaks again, you fix it and you deal with insurance and all of that kind of stuff. But, if we can figure out why it's breaking or failing or getting crowded, and we can put it in a stable environment, that's our goal. And I found, again, through that book and through working with people like Tim and Hoda, is you start realizing, okay, if we can, for me as a dentist, as a restorative dentist, if I can get the occlusion stable and everything all lined up properly, spaces lined up, everything perfect, you know what? What have I just done? I've got single tooth dentistry now because the occlusion's stable. I've got the spaces stable. Now, if they say, well, look, I can't afford to do the implant right now. Okay, well, Tim's like, hey, wear that appliance, make sure the space doesn't tip, and if you wait 5 years, Hoda's going to have to do a graft, but at least you'll be able to do that implant, or she may have to do a graft. As long as they know that, it's part of it. But now I'm doing single tooth dentistry. If they can afford only 3 crowns or 3 fillings that year and a root canal, well, then you just do that. But when they're all tipped and mangled and everything, it's a mess. We're just putting something in. It's like, hey, I want to redo this house. Well, structurally, we need to move the piles and we need to do the foundation, but can you just do it without it? Sure. And then it falls apart 5 years later, and it's like, now it's twice as much work because now you got to gut the house.
Right.
So, yeah, that ortho, like I'm going to tell you right now, if I look at the number of veneers I've done in the last 5 years from the previous 10 to 15, I just don't do them very much, because if I can convince them to do even some minor orthodontic movement, I'm saving teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think both Tim and Paresh bring up a very good point. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the holistic treatment of the patient. And that involves all the different disciplines in dentistry. And quite honestly, in my experience, when the whole team is talking, and the team involves patient as well, and you create that value for the patient and they understand truly why you're providing them or suggesting the care and the timeline to them as you are, there are more acceptance of it. And yes, financial sometimes is a limiting factor, but as Paresh was mentioning, when every team member is on board, we can talk about those timelines a little bit more and better. And once the patient consented to it and understands the compromises by waiting longer or not, then the treatment goes ahead easier in that sense.
It's interesting sometimes when we have our study club meetings and we'll present records on a patient and then have two scenarios. And in one, well, I'm sure other people have done this before too, but you have two scenarios. One is Cadillac treatment, whatever the best treatment I can possibly have, and the other one's like, look, I don't have a lot of money. How can you help me? And it sure makes it interesting to go through those scenarios sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean sometimes.
Yeah. Now I'm curious about this too. When you go through the treatment, I also want to know about the value that you build for each other through the patient process. Because a lot of times when you're creating a network like this, a group of people that are all working together, you have to build value for the patient going over to Tim's office and then Hoda's office. It's not one of those things where you just hand them a sheet of paper and say, go to see my buddy, do you? Can you talk about that? Because that's a huge piece of how you work together, correct?
It is. And if I might start, that is from my perspective as a restorative dentist, I would suggest that you almost interview the people you want to work with, but it all goes back to what Tim said earlier about your desire to want to practice a certain way, and understanding that maybe being a super dentist isn't always the best situation all the time, but finding the right specialists that are willing to take the time to understand how your practice philosophy is and that it's congruent with one another. And then number two, after that, it's a no-brainer for me, because I can just go, look, I mean, I do this all the time. It's just like, well, how come you can't do it, doc? It's not a lot. Can't you just do some aligners, or can't you just put the implant here and this one's, it looks pretty simple. And I said, yeah, but you know what? For me, it's easy, because I'll just say, look, these guys are doing this every day, multiple times a day or multiple times a week. So can I do it? Sure. Like, why am I choosing not to do that root canal? Because you know what? I don't do root canals. I haven't done them in years. If you want me to, it'll probably take me 3 or 4 times longer to do it. And I'm hoping I'll get a great result. Or you can go see my friend who can do it in an hour, and he does like 6 or 7 of them a day. What would you like? It's the same thing with dental implants. Hey, I've done a few hundred dental implants. This one involves extra work with the bone and sinuses. Do you want someone who's done it thousands of times, or someone who's done it this particular area of the mouth 20 times? It's pretty easy after that. Well, would you go to them? Yeah, my patients have gone to seeing these people, and my family has. It's easy. That's what I do. Because when you believe in these people, like, it's so easy, because there's no lying. It's you're just speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys deal it from the other way.
I think patients pick up on it too. Like when someone comes in for an exam, and you look and get a sense of what their problems are. Some of those patients where I may not have all the answers right away, but I know that we're going to figure it out. And I think patients pick up on that. Like I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy, but I think they know that I'm confident that I can work with you and Hoda and whoever else is on that team to make something happen. Whereas if you're not sure, that's going to come across when you're talking to your patients. They'll kind of wonder, do they really know what's going on, or are they going to be able to help me? And I'm sure we were like that. I wish I could have a clock back in time to see myself 20 years ago. It'd probably be horrifying, but we know we've grown and developed, and we worked at it, and now we're at the point now where we're pretty satisfied with how we care for people. It's always an ongoing effort, but if I was a young dentist, if I could go back in time and do things over, I think I would have started this process sooner. all the things we've done.
Absolutely. Hoda, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the same goes, honestly. I think when you work with a group of people and you understand their philosophy of practice, then as soon as you see the patient in your chair, you're no longer contradicting what they said to the patient. And as Tim was saying, patients are pretty good at that. They can pick it up. So for myself, if it's a referral with whom I have been working and I see something in patient's mouth, I know exactly what that referral is thinking for asking me to do what I'm trying to do. So then I can reinforce that treatment plan so that by building more value and trust for the patient into their referring doctor, right? Because they're hearing the same message from several different people. Right? Now they're saying, these guys are talking to each other. They know what my mouth needs. They know the objective. So in that regard, it's really helpful of people who have worked together. They understand each other's philosophy. They agree with each other's philosophy. So basically, it's better looked at after. Coincide, work with people or start initiating working with philosophy you're not very familiar with, okay? And I say familiar, not because somebody very smart once told me there's 7 ways to heaven, right? And maybe I only know one, right? So I got to pick up the phone. I got to, contact my referring doctor and say, by the way, this is something I saw. These are my thoughts. I'd like to know what your thoughts are as well, so that we can work together in front of the patient. In my practice, the worst thing I can ever do is to contradict my referring doctor in front of my patient. If there's ever a time that I feel like I don't understand what the request is, and I maybe don't agree with what the request is, I tell my patient, I have to get in touch with your referring doctor. I will call you back regarding your treatment plan once I have talked to them, and then we will formulate something for you that we both are on the same page about. So in that regard, I guess it's a learning curve when you work with the newer doctors, but it's really helpful when you have a good mature team that you work together for a long time.
Yeah. And I want to ask you guys these questions. Our friend Deepak, I love your questions, Deepak. It's so good. Do dental schools encourage this interdisciplinary concept in an appreciable way, or do practicing clinicians like you guys feel it is a must-do for optimum patient care and create alliances like this? So, I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
From a just everyday. I won't speak for grad schools, but no, I don't think they do. I think I don't think there's enough time to really nurture this philosophy in 4 years of dental school, or 3 years in my daughter's case. But the thing is, no, I don't think there's enough time. And I think you might have the odd gem of a part-time or a full-time clinician that you connect with that actually will try and maybe teach you that on the side a little bit. But I just don't think there's enough time. I think this needs to be done after. It's the old saying that we've always said, you don't know what you don't know, and you learn. The learning starts after. You get a very, very basic thing when you get out of dental school, and that's where you're hoping you have enough of a drive in you that you create a network of like-minded individuals that you can actually learn from, and then join organizations like the Seattle Study Club where you can even be mentored along the way. I do feel, and the two of them can speak to that, is that as soon as you get into grad school, there's more potential for interdisciplinary care. And I think a lot of the grad schools now, Tim and Hoda, are actually, collaborating amongst different residencies and that. But general dental schools, I don't think it is. Sorry, that's long-winded, but
I think in terms of grad school, I think that idea exists, and I think different schools probably do a better job of it than others. But even in grad school, there's still a challenge of you're learning your thing. You're worried about learning ortho stuff, for example, and you maybe know that perio is part of it, and hopefully there's some good mentors you can learn from. I feel so grateful that when I was in school, there were 2 people in particular that I learned a lot from, and one was Vince Kokich, who you mentioned, and the other was David Sarver. And from both those guys, I owe a gratitude to them, because they kind of helped cement that concept in my head. That meeting that you mentioned, Paresh, the AAO Interdisciplinary, it was pretty cool. It was pretty good. But I think coming out, we had a good time that trip. Actually,
we had a great time on that trip. Some of it we can't share, but no, I'm just kidding.
No, I think that's true though. I think it's. I think once you get out of ortho school, it's kind of a similar thing from finishing dental school and learning. I had this is just an aside, but I used to mount every case, and at some point I switched to digital files, and at the time, now you can do mounted cases digitally, so I have all these plaster models sitting around, and I had my son knocking off mounting plates and taking off labels and whatnot. And I picked up a model one time of a finished case, and it was a cuspid substitution. So the kid was missing laterals, and we'd substituted the cuspids. And this was quite a while ago. And I looked at it, and I just cringed because it was a pretty fair result compared to what I learned from David Sarver and other people, I suppose. But in terms of making that look good, and I think I do a much better job nowadays than I would have, and it's all part of learning and growing. I don't know. I think when I was young, I don't think I knew I had things to learn, but I don't think I truly appreciated how far I had to go. I'm hoping that before I die, I'll have more of it figured out.
Hey, all you and me together. So, but isn't that true though? Paresh, I think what you said is so true. I mean, your education starts once you get out in the world, and you learn so much that and I think the key here is if you're a young dentist watching these three, not one of them is saying, I got it all figured out. I've figured everything out. Absolutely. I got it. And you find that the dentists that have all figured it out, they're not that much fun to hang around with at meetings anyway. Your favorite people that you sit next to in any meeting are the most curious. They're like, how does that work? Like, how do you do that?
Absolutely. What was interesting is Hoda. Hoda moved to Ontario for a while because your husband was doing his MBA. And I had actually connected her with a colleague out there who's a prosthodontist, and she ended up doing a lot of collaborative work and some teaching with him. And she came back and she said, "Oh my God, that was some of the best experience that I learned about restorative." And I said, "Well, why?" And you can expand on this, Hoda. And she just because I learned, first of all, outside of our little bubble that we have in Winnipeg, there's a whole new world of dentistry out there. And on top of that, learning from other specialists, I've come to appreciate that I can't do the work with just my specialty. Mm-hmm. You can expand on that, but you told me that, and I was just like, yes, thank God you're back.
No, totally. I think, as Paresh was mentioning, one of the best thing, or twice it actually happened to me, was getting the right exposure right at the right time. So first, when I graduated out of dental school, I never thought I would specialize. Because quite honestly, going through, as Paresh was mentioning, the dental school is so comprehensive. There's so much to learn, and you just want to get out. Toward the end, you just want to get out. At least I did. I was exhausted. So when I went to Ontario for the first time, I practiced in a fairly large practice that had other specialty group coming into the practice to carry out some of the tasks. So therefore, I was exposed with a lot of things that a periodontist would do. So the periodontist wasn't just scaling and root planing the teeth. Periodontist was much more than that. So that actually got me really excited about going to grad school and, learning more about perio. And when I graduated out of perio, again, as I mentioned before, there was a certain level of arrogance, thinking, I know it all, right? And then I went to Ontario, and I worked with a very good friend of mine and dear mentor of mine, Dr. Ken Hebel. And he's a very well-known prosthodontist. He lectures extensively, and he had a very good, thriving implant dentistry type of a practice. And I remember the very first time that I took a cast to Ken, and I told him, okay, so Ken, this is the plan. This is how much space I have. I'm going to place 2 implants here. He looked at that cast and looked back at me, and I could tell in his eyes he just wanted to smack me. There was no better word for it. He just wanted to smack me, and he's such a gentle-hearted man. He would never admit to that, but I bet he did. Anyhow, he's like, I need to talk to you. And that was the beginning of all the conversation and all the training I had with him regarding the importance of the prosthetic treatment plan when it comes to implant dentistry. It's absolutely the key. Every surgeon who graduates out of every school says that. We all say that, but do we truly understand that? I am not sure if we do, because if we did, maybe we won't have so much problem with implant dentistry now, 5-10 years down the line. So initiation of a treatment plan starts, in a case of implant dentistry, it starts with the prosthetic treatment plan. It has nothing to do with the surgical. Surgical comes second. So that was I got lucky. I was able to be mentored by somebody like that who took the ownership of the mentorship. And I guess in a sense, I also wanted to do that as well. So I allowed myself to be in that situation, because when I did go to London, Ontario, I had the opportunity to join another perio practice. And the perio practice would have been a much better fit in a sense that they had patients for me, they had the room for me. At Ken's practice, he told me, he was very honest with me. He's like, I have no patients for you. You will have to, bring in your own patients, but what I can promise you is an education. Mm-hmm. And so I picked that. So I guess being open to those opportunities and seeing them is a key, and understanding that you don't know everything, that you still need to learn. And so nowadays, if I pick continuing education, it's really more prosthetic continuing education, even though I'm not looking to become a prosthodontist. I accept and I respect my restorative doctor and their skill, and I'm thankful that they do that part of it, because I have no interest in it. But I need to understand that in order to be able to work with them. So not limiting yourself to your own specialty or your own interest, but really exposing yourself to everything that our profession can offer in every different discipline.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And Rodrigo, who wasn't able to make it today, he says, "Hey, Paresh, where's your tie?" So
yeah, I was giving him a hard time.
I love that.
I don't need a tie, man.
I don't see you in a tie. You're pretty relaxed. So I do want to ask you this. Deepak is just awesome. You should be my co-host, Deepak. It's awesome. There's a feeling of certain percentage of patients that there's some hucksterism in dentistry, and upselling is happening. Have you encountered a patient feeling like your interdisciplinary concept is really an upsell? And if so, how do you handle it?
Good question. For me, it's easy. And these two might have a difference. So I definitely want to hear what these two have to say. But for me, it's like, you know what? I'm at the stage now where I try my best to just basically say, if you're not comfortable with what I'm trying to explain to you here, I'm sure you'll find a dentist somewhere else that will do exactly what you want. I just don't want to go down that path. Mm-hmm. So you're welcome to find that. If you want to work with the way that I feel we should, I need you to have these consultations and be fully informed before I choose to ignore one of the things that I'm asking you to do. And otherwise, I'm not comfortable proceeding any further. But it's hard to do that. When I was 6, 7, 8 years out, even 5 years out, whatever, I wasn't comfortable with that, because you feel invincible and you just want to do all the work. And when you make a few mistakes along the way, you start realizing that maybe, cutting your losses in some areas and not taking a patient down a path is the way. So I just graciously decline and say, I know you're going to find someone. You keep going and ringing on doorbells, and you will eventually find the dentist that will do what you want.
And somebody smart, very smart, once said, and I always remember this when I come across those patients, just because the patient doesn't want to do the right thing doesn't mean you have to do the wrong thing. And I think that's a very simple saying, but it's so true. And if we can remind ourselves and give ourselves the flexibility to say, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not the practitioner for you, because this is truly, honestly, the best thing I think should be done, and I would want this to be done in my own mouth. And if you don't want to accept this, I'm not willing to accept the responsibility and the sequels of failure that will come because I listened to you today.
Right.
True.
It's a good question though. Like I had a negative review on a site recently because I'd seen a kid, and I'm pretty sure I know which patient it was, and she was very retrognathic, and especially today we're aesthetically driven orthodontics. You consider people's profile, and for some patients, we're fortunate in Manitoba that for the most part, surgical services are largely covered. So if someone needs a BSSO, a mandibular advancement, they can get it. So for this kid, I said, well, here's the thing, is that you would benefit from surgery. And I like to think that I give patients all the options that are available and let them decide. There was a time before when, as a profession, we were more paternalistic and we kind of made decisions for people. But I want to make sure I'm explaining every option. And for this kid, I thought that surgery was a good option. And they had gone for a second opinion, and the other orthodontist said, "Oh no, you don't need surgery. We can fix it without." And they probably took out 2 upper buys. And I probably talked about that, but I think they got this. Like the comments in this person's comment were along the lines that I was trying to sell them something, and it really irritated me because the reality is that for the most part, for me, surgical treatment is less profitable, for lack of a better term. It takes longer, and there's more appointments, there's more work involved from my perspective. So if I just wanted to make money, I wouldn't offer surgery. If that was the only thing I cared about, then I would do less surgery than I do. So I think Deepak's comments kind of, it's a good comment in a way. We have to be aware that some patients might perceive it that way, but I think as long as you sort of say, look, these are the problems, and here's some potential solutions, and you decide what's best for you. I have this instructor in ortho school, and he had a great analogy that he used a lot. And so we're in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is, if you've never been, for anyone who's watching, it's quite possibly one of the greatest places in the world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But having said that, I'll say to patients, if there's a choice sometimes, I'll say, you can go to Hawaii, or you can go to another place. And depending on how bad I think plan B is, the other place changes. So I might say you can go to Hawaii or you can go to Calgary. And they're both great places, but they're not the same place. Just trying to make the point that it's not just treatment. You're making a decision about where you're headed. And sometimes, I'm going to offend people from Regina, but Regina's a great city too. But from Winnipeg, it's like if you're from, there's always some place you got to make fun of. So I'm going to make fun of Regina. Sorry, friends there.
Ooh,
but,
wow.
And I've been there. I've been there. It is cold sometimes, like really cold.
You said sometimes controversy is good on this.
I love it.
Show,
Bring it.
So
Bring
I
it.
think I owe some beers for all my friends in Regina now. But anyways, you know what I'm saying. You have to sometimes make that point to patients that we're not trying to sell them stuff, but we're trying to give them options for how they might fix things. And you'd be surprised if you actually offer things to patients in a reasonable way, then they might bite. But I have Paresh sends me patients sometimes where it would be a slam dunk, 10 veneers, you'll have an instant nice smile, and he says, no, I think you need to go see and they'll come in and say, look, I just want veneers, but he said I had to see you first. And some of those patients, you can do that, but if you say, do you want ortho? And they go, no. And then you say, I didn't think so. And then you do your veneers. It's a different mindset, I think.
Yeah. But, you all three of you have alluded to this. Don't you think aging plays a good role in this? Like, Paresh, when I hear you, I hear between the lines, look, I'm getting older now. I don't have time for this. I'm going to do this the right way. And if you don't want to do it, that's cool. I'm totally cool with that. We all share a mutual friend, Bill Robbins, and I love how Bill describes the aging process. He says, I used to get so stressed out when patients would, it'd see that case and they'd go, it's not white enough. He'd look at him and go, nope, it's plenty white. And so, just as a point, look, I'm going to take really great care of you. I'm going to do the right thing.
Right.
And if it's okay. And then also too, kind of preparing them, Tim, that they can go other places and you're going to find different solutions. And don't you think the sting of a review is less once hey, look, I just did the right thing? Because if you're questioning the right thing, I think the sting of the review is higher. But if you say, hey, look, I did the right thing there, I'm sorry they weren't happy, I'm okay with that. Would you agree?
I think that comment would have bothered me a lot more 10 years ago than it does now. I think you kind of summarized it pretty well. Otherwise,
sometimes it's not just with the patients. Sometimes as a referral practice, you don't do what your referral doctor wants you to do,
Right.
You lose the referral, right?
Yeah.
So I guess sometimes your skin has to be thick to really stand by your principle and really say, I understand what it is that you want to do, but quite honestly, in my opinion, this is just not going to work out long term for this patient, and we need to find a better way. And they may decide that they don't want to work with you, right? So I mean, the sting of that sometimes is a little bit more, because as we are in a smaller community, so it becomes a balancing matter, you know. And I guess you just have to grow thick skin.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes too, though, if you're a young dentist and there's somebody comes in and you got debt, right? You got bills to pay, you have student loans, you got practice debt, and you're feeling some stress from that. And you sometimes think, man, I need that case to say yes. And for some of those treatments, those are your biggest regrets. You think, my God, like you're married to some problem that you wish you'd never compromise. You know, I know it's not easy. It's a real dilemma sometimes, but sometimes it's just not worth it. And it just takes a while. You have to get burned a couple times, I guess, before you truly appreciate that.
You know, and that's what it is, Tim. You're right. It's just you know, when you're practicing long enough, I don't care what anyone says, there's always things that don't go perfect. And the more you get into more involved in interdisciplinary cases or comprehensive cases, the higher the risk there is. But you know, it's part of the growing process. And that's where feeling alone and isolated, and that, I think, guys, it would be the same whether you're a specialist or not, is kind of hard. You know, it really does help us that we could pick up the phone, we could text each other, we can email each other and just say, you know, man, I had quite the day today and this. And then sometimes it's about our patients, sometimes it's just what's going on within our practices. But you don't want to be isolated. And I think it's very important, as soon as you get out of school and beyond that, to have a network. Have a network of like-minded individuals within your community. We have some outside of our community, like in different cities as well. And that helps also to frame things, right, Hoda, Tim, because you have the ability to also talk to some of your colleagues in a different city and realize that, you know, they might be in San Francisco, Miami, and in Toronto, and they're like, you know what, it's not a lot different. Like, we still run, and that's the same with me. And it's just to have that, and that's where the study club is just, I don't know, for me, it's been really amazing.
I think the study club's been, professionally, it's been the most satisfying thing for me, is the relationships we've had within our club in Winnipeg, and also all the people that we've met over the years at the symposium and at the directors' meetings. I mean, I've learned so much from so many smart people, and I don't know, if I couldn't give that up. I think it's made my whole career more satisfying.
And our lives better. So all the way around. Yeah.
And we wouldn't have met you.
Well, I'm, you know, they, you know, I've heard people say this. We're not as smart as, I'm not as smart as all. How do you say that? Well, this just gives you a little insight of what's in this reptile brain. But I feel like I'm carrying up the, you know, the tail end of here. I feel so grateful just to be immersed in such greatness. And you know, they always say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. So I got up my game so I get included to these meetings again and again. So I'm just grateful. So I agree. I can't imagine a life without it. It's like the one time, you know, you've got it locally, but then you also have the times per year where you're like, hey, I get to see my buddies, I get to up my game, and really the learning is over the top. I mean, heck, the food is over the top. So you can't go wrong. And really, it goes to your point, though. Both of you said, all of you can't be isolated. You know, one of the dangers in being good in dentistry is you can isolate yourself, or in dentistry, period. I mean, you don't have a lot of people checking on you when you own your own practice and like, hey, man, I just thought I'd walk across the hall, see how you're doing. People don't do that. You can really dig yourself in a hole that's pretty deep. And when you're around a great-minded people, I mean, it brings everybody up.
True.
Absolutely.
True. It's and you know what, when you're networking and building these relationships outside of your practice. It's amazing the number. I had a local dentist a number of years ago. A lot of people were just kind of, didn't really, when you talk to business people and they tell you, like, there's a lot of people that are successful that don't mind mentoring if you approach them. But a lot of people just think when you go to them that they're going to be standoffish. Mm-hmm. And so there were a few local dentists, probably about 12, 13, 14 years ago where, a lot of people will go like, I don't know if I would talk to this person. I'm not really sure about that person, but how do I know unless I go myself? And I'd call a few of them and say, hey, I want to change the style of practice that I'm doing. Would you mind if I took you out for lunch and just kind of find out how you practice? And they're like, sure. And it's the same thing. As soon as you go to, I'm gravitating again to the Seattle Study Club because this is our common bond right now. But when you go there and you have some of the educators there that are our mentors, like, seriously, Tim, how many times have we gone and we've had a beer with some of our mentors or just sat and had lunch with them?
And, super cool.
And we're not always talking about dentistry, but we're talking about families. Our families know one another, and we share, and they're there as a resource for us. It's pretty cool. And, especially at that level, that if you've got something going on and you need some help, you can actually count on these people. And they sometimes will ask you for help, which is flattering.
And the beautiful thing about the study club like this is the importance and the emphasization of allowing the younger generation to get incorporated as well. Because they do find it intimidating at the very beginning to come up to somebody who had 15, 20, 30 years of experience and ask them questions. But in a safe environment like this, maybe the first session they don't ask, maybe the second session, but by the third session, when they get incorporated, then they find the confidence to go ahead and ask the questions that they thought they couldn't. And that's how the relationship starts and maintains as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so crazy grateful for the friendships I have with you guys. I get to see you guys all the time. And every once in a while, I get to come up and see you up in your neck of the woods. I usually have to wear something, a heavy coat, but it's such a special place where you guys are at and what you guys do. And like I mentioned to you before this, I want to have you guys back for a whole bunch of these on different subjects because I think what you do is just incredible. And I'm just grateful. So thank you guys. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, because I'm sure if people are watching this, if you're a young dentist and you're watching this and you're like, I don't know if I could do this, reach out to these guys. These are not only incredible people, incredible clinicians, they're great educators, and they're very willing to help. How can people get a hold of you guys?
Use my email, or go to my website, drpareshshaw.com. It's got my email address and everything there.
I think Ben was going to share our email addresses, maybe.
Yeah, Ben, I'll have Ben, our producer, put those right in, if you guys don't mind. I mean, we'll share
not at all.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Not at all. No, that would be fantastic. It's great. Anytime that somebody reaches out, it's actually, personally, I feel good. Because that means that the message was received by somebody who was interested. And it started a communication. It started a discussion. So that's great. So anytime.
Absolutely. Well, you guys stay on for just a second while we say goodnight. I know, Paresh, we've been keeping you long. You got dinner plans tonight. But I appreciate you guys. So just stay on for just a second while we wait. Hold on. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. If you're watching this, thank you so much for watching the Best Practice Show. If you guys found this valuable today, do me a favor, just hit the share button and share it with your friends. Obviously, we'd love for you to spread the good word. And keep sending us suggestions for great shows, things you want to hear from Team Winnipeg. I will ask them directly and we'll put shows together. It is awesome to watch these guys do what they do. So until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.